famous scene where Porfiry describes Raskolnikov's hope to be the Napoleonic man happens in Part 3, Section 5. Before meeting Porfiry, Raskolnikov had 3 different psychological stances. He wanted to get away with the crime whenever he was confronted with accusations. He wanted to confess whenever he was alone. And he wanted to serve something larger than himself when that chance arose. When Porfiry's assistant confronts Raskolnikov at the bar, Raskolnikov is cocky and defiant. When Raskolnikov walks through the town alone, he finds himself drawn to the police station by a desire to confess. When he sees Sonia's plight after the death of her father, he thinks of sinking his life into Sonia's family and helping them out as a new purpose. Raskolnikov is both a man of Christian conscience and a corrupt product of the modern university, where he is taught to forget the conscience in the name of ideology. He is both in the thick of a life dedicated to the good and dedicated to beyond good and evil. His confrontation with Porfiry is clarifying, if nothing else. Raskolnikov's status reflects the status of the conscience, as Razumikin realizes as he observes the Raskolnikov-Porfiry conversation. The strong Napoleonic man do not suffer from pangs of conscience when they kill, or do what conventional men think is wrong. They see their wrong in light of what they are creating, and the beauty and the power of their omelet making makes the eggs cracked seem like nothing. Normal men do not make omelets, so it is best that they live according to the established rules. On this view, conscience is entirely social conscience, a sense of right and wrong imbued into people by society. Raskolnikov is defiant as he leaves Porfiry's house at the end of Part 3. Raskolnikov and Razumikin continue talking for a bit. The police don't have the facts. Razumikin cannot mention the murder. He calls it that thing or such phrases. But then the two friends part, and Raskolnikov is left alone. When Raskolnikov is left alone, a tradesman emerges from the dark. The tradesman accuses him. He calls him a murderer. And then just as quickly the tradesman is gone. There is a physical description of the tradesman, but it is difficult to escape the conclusion that this tradesman is indeed Raskolnikov's conscience in this context. It is actually not his conscience, but it sure seems like it at the time. The tradesman is called a man from underground. It affects Raskolnikov as if it were his conscience too, in that he is speechless, he feels cold, he cannot sleep, his knees tremble, and so on. He also buys into the logic that Razumikin had laid out. He acknowledges that he is not an extraordinary Napoleonic man. Those people are made differently. The true master to whom all is permitted sacks Toulon, makes a slaughterhouse of Paris, forgets an army in Egypt, expends 1 million men in a Moscow campaign, and gets off with a pun at Vilno. And when he dies, they set up monuments to him, and thus everything is permitted. No, obviously such men are made not of flesh, but of bronze. He had hoped that he had killed for a principle, for socialism, it seems, for universal happiness. But nothing can excuse the killing of the old crone's sister. Raskolnikov sleeps. He dreams of the tradesman again and of his accusation. Murderer. He dreams he is standing over the bodies of the slain sisters. And he suddenly wakes up. His dream is more obviously than the working of his conscience. The accusation of the tradesman is an accusation of his soul, though we will find out later that the tradesman in real life is a plant of sorts from Porfiry to test Raskolnikov's resolve. Raskolnikov never denies the accusation, but the dreamed of tradesman, that affects Raskolnikov because he is conscience-bound. From the end of Part 3, the book proceeds toward its denouement. 3 or 4 relationships especially matter here. Raskolnikov and Svergeliov, Raskolnikov and Porfiry, and Raskolnikov and Sonya, and more peripherally, Raskolnikov and Razumikin. We are going to explore the rest of the action through these relationships. Each relation leads Raskolnikov wanting to confess, or at least toward the determination to confess his crime to the police. Each offers a different motivation for Raskolnikov. Together, these characters make up the moral environment within which Raskolnikov's confession makes sense. Let us look at these relations generally before delving into great detail in the subsequent videos. Part 4 opens with the arrival of Svidrigailov, who confronts Raskolnikov and is angling for Raskolnikov's sister, Dunya. Then Raskolnikov visits Razumikin, then his family, then Sonya, where he almost confesses and says that he will reveal to her tomorrow who killed the old crone and Lizaveta. Then Raskolnikov goes to visit Porfiry again, who accuses him more directly. Raskolnikov leaves Porfiry's house and sees the tradesman again. And that's the end of part 4. The funeral banquet and surrounding, including the confrontation between a radical reformer of sorts and Luzhin, the liberal, occupy the first 3 sections of part 5. But the centerpiece is Raskolnikov's confession to Sonya in section 4, part 5. It is a private confession, and she tries to convince Raskolnikov to confess formally and accept his punishment. Svidrigailov has heard the whole thing, and he threatens to reveal the secret to everyone at the end of part 5. This sets the rest of the novel in motion. Svidrigailov will keep quiet if Raskolnikov will arrange a tryst with his sister of Svidrigailov. And Svidrigailov tells Raskolnikov that it will either be suicide or Siberia for him. Porfiry tells Raskolnikov that he knows he killed the crone and his sister in section 2 of part 6. Raskolnikov contemplates suicide in section 3. Svidrigailov gets to the point of suicide in sections 4 through 6, including a tense scene where he threatens Sonya with rape. Svidrigailov kills himself at the end of section 6. Meanwhile, Raskolnikov comes to the point of confession, first with his sister and then with the police. Part 6 ends as the whole ends, with his confession to the police. Raskolnikov cannot help but see himself in Svidrigailov. Both killed women. Both see ghosts. Both contemplate suicide. This is the trajectory of the drama. Svidrigailov goes through with the suicide. We will have to see why he does and why Raskolnikov does not. Is it their respective circumstances, or is it something in their souls? We will pick up that question in the next video.